I've spent years convincing myself what I did was survival, not betrayal. Everyone saw me as ambitious, responsible, even successful, but none of them knew the truth I've buried since childhood. The secret eats at me every night. If this made your day easier, make mine better with a quick like and subscribe. Thank you. When I was just 10 years old, I thought I was living every kid's dream. While other kids were running lemonade stands or charging a couple bucks for babysitting, I was running what I proudly called my vitamin distribution business. Yeah, vitamins. At least that's what I believed. I had 47 regular customers, a notebook full of carefully detailed sales records, and get this, I was pulling in $600 a week. At 10. I thought I was a genius. I even wore this little homemade entrepreneur badge I'd crafted out of cardboard and glitter, like it was my CEO nameplate. So when the police eventually came across my notebook, I didn't panic. I didn't hide it. No, I opened it up and presented it to them like it was my life's magnum opus, my customer tracking spreadsheets, my expansion plans, everything. I even asked the judge later, dead serious, who was going to inherit my company after my mom got sentenced to 12 years. I mean, that's how far gone I was. It all started when mom asked me to help with her vitamin D business. And look, I was over the moon. I wasn't some kid folding laundry for an allowance. I was learning to count cash, track sales, even balance books. Taxes. At 10 years old. Can you imagine? I thought she picked me because I had the touch, that personal charm customers loved. Even when I was trudging 6 blocks in the pouring rain, carrying backup supplies in a backpack twice my size, or when Mr. Jenkins cussed me out for waking him during his afternoon nap, I still felt important. Chosen. So whenever teachers asked, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" I'd puff out my chest and brag, "An entrepreneur." People were impressed. I even knew what that word meant. Nobody ever wondered why a kid my age could throw around terms like intent to distribute. Nobody asked why I always had wads of cash in my backpack. They just thought I was playing pretend. Then one afternoon, Mom stumbled out of her room looking rough. Her hair was greasy, her eyes darting, her arms twitching like she had ants under her skin. And me? I sprinted up with my trusty notebook, bouncing on my toes like a proud little intern. "Mommy, look. I got 3 new customers today by myself. They said I'm so smart." She barely glanced at me. "That's great, baby," she muttered, scratching at her arms. "Mom, it's Thursday." I chirped, like maybe my excitement could snap her out of it. Her face dropped. Completely white. "No, no, no, no. Carlos said Wednesday. He promised me Wednesday." She snatched the calendar off the wall, dialing number after number, begging someone to pick up. Then bam. She hurled her phone against the wall. I didn't need to be told what was happening. I knew what she wanted. "Mom, I collected early from the Torres family today. 200. Her whole demeanor changed. Like flipping a switch. She snatched the cash, counted it twice, then pulled me into this desperate hug. "That's my smart baby. My little hustler. You just saved Mommy's whole day." But the hug didn't last. Seconds later, she was out the door, screeching off in her car, shouting back, "Lock the door, okay?" And me? I was left standing there with cold mac and cheese on the stove and no one to eat dinner with. So I did what I always did, set up my notebook at the kitchen table, practicing my sales pitch to the empty room. I organized customer profiles, checked collection schedules. And every night, Mom would flip through my records like I just handed her a golden ticket. "You're so organized," she'd praise. And I'd beam. But as I got older, little cracks started showing. I noticed her hands trembling when she sorted the bottles. How she'd count the same capsules again and again, panicking if even one was missing. She'd send me to my room for private calls, but I could hear her through the vents, begging some guy named Juan for just a few more days. Once I heard her crying, whispering that she didn't want to use her kid, but she had no choice. At the time I just figured, business is stressful, right? Adults cry about bills. No big deal. So I took on more. I learned which customers were headaches. Like Mr. Torres, who'd blow up my phone if I was 5 minutes late. Or Jennifer from the yellow apartment, who'd only meet me at the corner, constantly looking over her shoulder. Then there were the college kids pooling money to buy in bulk, laughing about how our vitamins made studying easier. Didn't matter if it was raining, if I had homework piling up, I was on that corner delivering. Mom even upped my commissions, $20 some weeks. I saved every cent in a shoebox under my bed, dreaming of one day having a shiny glass office with my name on the door. And then came that Tuesday. The one that shattered everything. I couldn't find my marble notebook. I tore through the house, panicking, until the principal called me to his office. Inside were 2 cops and a woman in a sharp pink suit who introduced herself as someone who helps families. And in her hand was my notebook. The officer knelt beside me, speaking gently. "We need to ask about your mom's vitamin business." I lit up. Finally, someone wanted to hear about it. I launched into my spiel, my customer base, my record-keeping system, how I'd even printed business cards at the library. I explained my expansion ideas, my cash collection process. I thought they'd be impressed, maybe even tell me I was destined for Wall Street. But instead, their mouths hung open. They exchanged horrified looks. And in that moment, though I didn't understand why yet, my whole life was already changing. Forever. The woman in the pink suit leaned closer to me, her voice soft but firm. "We're going to need to call someone to pick you up, sweetheart, while your mom helps the police with some questions." My little heart leapt. Mom was helping the police? That sounded official. Important. Maybe they wanted to learn about our business model. I sat up straighter, practically bouncing in my chair. "Oh. Can you call Jennifer?" "Jennifer from the yellow apartment." She's Mom's friend and one of our best customers. The adults in the room traded a look, that quiet, loaded kind of look kids aren't supposed to notice but always do. The woman in pink gave me this cautious smile and asked for Jennifer's number. I rattled it off proudly like a walking Rolodex. My customer database skills were unmatched. 20 minutes later, Jennifer walked into the principal's office. And the second her eyes landed on the cops, she froze. Her skin drained of color. Her hands shook the way Mom sometimes did after a bad night. "Hi, Jennifer." I waved like she'd come to a birthday party. "Guess what? I showed the police all our business records. They loved it. I even told them about your regular Tuesday orders." Jennifer's knees buckled. She grabbed the doorframe like the officers were pointing guns at her instead of holding clipboards. The woman in pink rushed to her side, guiding her to a chair. "It's okay," she whispered gently. "We just need you to take care of him for a little while." Jennifer's voice was barely a breath. "Where's his mom?" "She's helping us with our investigation," one of the cops replied. Jennifer signed some papers, her hands shaking so badly she could hardly grip the pen. Her face looked green like she might pass out. On the way to her car, I buckled myself in and did what I always did, thought about business. "Jennifer, can we stop at the Torres place? It's Thursday and I need to collect their payment. Mr. Torres gets really mad if I'm late. He already texted me 3 times today." That's when Jennifer slammed the brakes so hard I flew forward against my seatbelt. She yanked the car to the curb, jumped out, and threw up onto the pavement. I blinked. "Are you sick?" I asked when she climbed back in. "Mom gets sick sometimes too. I've got extra vitamins in my bag if you want." And that's when Jennifer broke. She started sobbing, loud, gut-deep sobs that shook her whole body. Her tears blurred in the rearview mirror as she looked back at me like I was some kind of monster. "I'm sorry," I stammered. "I didn't mean to make you cry." "Hey, I know. What if we launch a referral program? You bring new customers and you get a discount. I've already worked out the pricing." Her hands clutched the wheel so hard her knuckles went white. She drove the rest of the way in silence, tears streaming down her face, while I kept chattering about profit margins and retention strategies, desperate to cheer her up. Her apartment smelled like stale smoke and sour dishes. Empty bottles cluttered the coffee table. Jennifer collapsed on the couch, head in her hands. "Can I use your phone?" I asked brightly. "I need to call the Torres family about tomorrow's delivery. And the Johnsons still owe for last week. Oh, and the college kids usually need their Friday refill." Jennifer's head snapped up, her eyes red and swollen. "How many customers do you have?" I puffed out my chest with pride. 47 regulars, plus about a dozen casuals. Mom says I'm a natural salesman. Want to see my spreadsheet? I made it on the library computer. Jennifer bolted to the bathroom to vomit again. When she came back, she was clutching her phone with trembling hands. She dialed someone, whispering fast. "It's worse than we thought. The kid, he knows everything. Every customer. Every delivery. Every oh God, what have we done?" I tilted my head. Of course I knew everything. I was the one who ran the records. Then she called someone else. This time her words came through choked sobs. "I can't do this. I can't. I'm sick too. Please, you have to send someone else. I can't take care of him." An hour later, the woman in pink reappeared with another lady who smiled too wide. Jennifer was curled up on her couch, rocking back and forth, muttering over and over, "I'm sorry. I can't. I'm sick too." I didn't get it. Why were all the adults suddenly sick? Maybe there was a virus spreading. I made a mental note, bump up neighborhood vitamin D supply. The new lady drove me to a big building full of bright lights and offices. They kept offering me snacks, asking if I was tired. But I was too excited about all the attention to eat. "We found emergency foster parents," the woman in pink finally said. An older couple walked in, kind-looking but nervous. The woman had silver hair and kind eyes. The man kept his arm tight around her shoulders. They signed papers while I fussed with my backpack, making sure my business kit was secure. "What's in the bag, sweetheart?" the foster mom asked gently. "Oh, just my business stuff." I grinned, unzipping it. "Customer lists, delivery schedules, today's collections." I pulled out my wad of cash and counted it. $600. The Torres family paid early and Jennifer even gave me a bonus for excellent service. The foster parents went pale. The dad stepped back, fumbling for his phone. The mom stared at the cash like it was radioactive. "I've also got payment tracking sheets," I added proudly, spreading out my records. "Every customer, every order, every date for the past 2 years. Mom says good bookkeeping is the key to success." The woman in pink snatched the pages, scanning them. Her face grew whiter with every line. She whispered to another worker who bolted down the hall. Meanwhile, the foster parents muttered urgently, "Exposure risk, our other kids, not equipped for this." 20 minutes later, they were gone. Just like that. I was carted off to yet another building. This one had rows of bunk beds, the smell of old socks, and a TV blaring in the common room. "This is a temporary shelter," the woman in pink explained. "Just for tonight." I nodded, already planning. Maybe I could recruit some of the other kids, turn them into customers or even junior partners. Expansion was key in any transition phase. They let me keep my notebook after checking it. I watched one staff member turn green as she read through my customer profiles. She hurried off, whispering frantically to her boss. That night, lying in a strange bunk bed, I reviewed tomorrow's delivery schedule by the dim light. The Torreses expected their order. Jennifer usually needed her Friday refill. The college kids wanted their weekend supply. I had to figure out how to keep everything running. Mom always said communication was key during tough times. The next morning, I saw my mom's face on the TV in the common room. The news anchor's voice boomed, "Shocking case of child exploitation, 10-year-old used to run drug distribution operation." I sat up straighter, thrilled. Free advertising. Publicity was expensive, but here we were on the morning news. That's my mom. I told the kid next to me. We run a vitamin service. I'm head of customer relations. The other kids scrambled away like I had the plague. One older boy sneered. "That ain't vitamins, stupid. Your mom had you pushing pills." I scoffed. "No, they're vitamins. I've got the product catalog memorized. Wanna hear the options?" The boy laughed coldly. "You really don't get it, do you?" I was about to argue when a familiar voice cut through the room. "Sweetheart." I turned. Miss Rodriguez, my teacher, stood in the doorway, eyes full of tears. The staff let her sit beside me. She reached out carefully like I was made of glass. "Oh, honey. I'm so sorry. I should have known. All those class projects about being an entrepreneur, all those business plans you showed me. You said I had the best business model." I reminded her proudly. "You gave me an A+ for my customer retention strategies." Her tears fell harder. "I thought you were pretending. Playing business the way kids play house. I never imagined." She pulled me into a hug, sobbing. And I just sat there, utterly confused. Why was everyone so upset about my success? After lunch, a man in a suit walked in. He introduced himself as my lawyer. His face was kind, but his eyes were heavy, like he was already carrying bad news. He sat across from me, pulling out a yellow legal pad, pen at the ready. Finally, someone who actually wanted to hear the details. Someone who understood the importance of what I'd built. "This is great," I said, grinning. "We've got 47 regulars. The Torres family, biggest buyers, 200 every Thursday, sometimes more. Jennifer from the yellow apartment? Tuesdays, always at the corner of 5th and Main. She insists on that." I rattled off the details like a seasoned businessman giving an investor pitch. But the more I talked, the more his pen flew across the page, and the darker his face became. By the time I started listing the college kids and their standing orders, he raised his hand to stop me. Do you understand what these vitamins actually were?" he asked softly. I didn't hesitate. "Of course. Mom said they're special vitamins. Blue ones for energy. White ones for pain. Yellow ones to stay awake when you're studying. Each kind for a different problem." The lawyer dropped his head into his hands, groaning into his palms. "Has anyone explained why your mom was arrested?" I repeated what I'd been told. "She's helping the police, right? Probably about regulations or taxes. Mom always said the government doesn't make it easy for small business owners." That evening, one of the staff called me over. "It's your mom on the phone." I snatched the receiver like it was a lifeline. "Mom? You won't believe it, we're on TV. Free publicity. And guess what? I gave the customer list to the police so they can help us grow." Her voice cut sharp through the line. "Baby, stop." She sounded different. Scared. Broken. "Stop talking about the business. Please." "But Mom, I made 600 this week. The Torres family paid ear." "Stop." Her voice cracked. Then I heard her crying. "No more, baby. Please. Don't talk about it anymore. To anyone." I froze. Did I do something wrong? I followed everything you taught me. I kept the records perfect. I never missed a delivery. Her voice was small. Defeated. "You didn't do anything wrong. Mommy did. Mommy did something very, very wrong. And I'm so sorry." And then click. The line went dead. I just stood there with the receiver buzzing in my hand, my head spinning. How could building a successful business be wrong? The next day, another woman came, an investigator. She had boxes of evidence, my marble notebook, printouts of texts from Mom's phone. She slid one toward me. "Can you tell me what need 30 blues by Thursday means?" I smiled, relieved to be useful again. "That's simple. Blue vitamins, 30 pills, Thursday delivery. That's probably Torres. They always order big." She showed another. "What about white angels for the usual spot?" "Oh, that's Jennifer. She calls them angels sometimes. The usual spot is the corner of 5th and Main. She doesn't like us knocking on her door." The investigator's jaw tightened. She flipped to another page. "Numbers and dates. Do you recognize this number?" I didn't even need to think. "That's Torres. He called 17 times last Tuesday. He gets anxious if we're late. Mom says he's our most difficult customer, but hey, he pays well, so we keep him happy." For almost an hour, I rattled off names, numbers, code words, delivery times. I thought I was being helpful. The investigator and my lawyer looked like they'd aged 10 years in front of me. "You have an incredible memory," she said quietly. "Thanks," I said, grinning. "Mom says a real entrepreneur knows their business inside and out." "Oh, can someone call Torres? He's probably freaking out about me missing yesterday's delivery." Her face fell. "Torres has been arrested." I blinked. "Arrested? For what?" "He's just a customer. Sure, he calls too much, but he's harmless." She shook her head slowly. "He wasn't just a customer. He's a dealer. A big one. We've been trying to catch him for years." My stomach dropped. "Dealer? No, that wasn't right. He bought vitamins." "You're wrong," I whispered. "They're vitamins. Mom told me so." But even as the words left my mouth, the pieces started to snap together like jagged glass. Mom's shaking hands. Jennifer's panic. Customers meeting me on corners. Mom crying through the vents, saying she had no choice but to use me. The truth slammed into me so hard I thought I might pass out. I want to go home, I muttered, clutching the table. I have deliveries to make. Customers are counting on me. The investigator's voice was soft but final. You can't go home, and there won't be any more deliveries. That night, the news ran another segment. This time, they said my name. They called me the 10-year-old drug courier. One of the worst child endangerment cases in county history. I shoved a pillow over my head, but I could still hear the whispers from the other kids in the shelter. And for the first time, it hit me. All those times I'd bragged about being an entrepreneur. All the praise from teachers. All the pride I'd felt lugging my backpack of vitamins. It was all a lie. The woman in pink found me crying in my bunk. She didn't lecture. She just sat beside me, silent, until I finally looked up. Then she handed me a tissue. It's not your fault, she said. You were just a kid trying to help your mom. I wiped my nose. My voice cracked. But I was good at it. I was really, really good at it. Her eyes softened, glistening. I know, she whispered. That's what makes this so heartbreaking. After lunch, a man in a dark suit walked into the shelter. He introduced himself as my lawyer. His smile was kind, but his eyes were heavy, like he'd seen too much. He sat down across from me, flipped open a yellow legal pad, and started firing off questions about the business. Finally, someone who got it. Someone who wanted to know about my operation in detail. This is perfect, I said eagerly. We've got 47 regular customers. The Torres family? Biggest spenders. $200 every Thursday, sometimes more if they're running low. Jennifer in the yellow apartment, always Tuesday afternoons, and she only meets me at the corner of 5th and Main. His pen scratched furiously across the page. But with every detail I gave, his expression darkened. By the time I started rattling off the college kids' names and their bulk orders, he raised a hand like he couldn't hear anymore. Do you understand, he asked softly, what these vitamins really were? I blinked. Of course. Mom told me they were special vitamins that help people feel better. Blue ones for energy. White ones for pain. Yellow ones to stay awake while studying. Different pills for different problems. The lawyer buried his face in both hands, like he was trying to hide from what I just said. Has anyone explained why your mom was arrested? He asked quietly. I repeated what the woman in pink had told me. She's helping the police, right? Probably about taxes or regulations. Mom always said the government makes it impossible for small business owners. That evening, a staff member waved me over. It's your mom on the phone. I grabbed the receiver, thrilled. Mom, you won't believe this, we're on TV. The news even talked about the business. Oh, and I gave the police our customer list so they can help us expand operations. Baby, stop. Her voice sounded different. Shaky. Tired. Almost scared. I froze. But Mom, I made $600 this week. The Torres family paid early, Anne. Stop. She cut me off, sobbing now. Please, baby. No more. Don't talk about it anymore. Not to anyone. My stomach twisted. Did I do something wrong? I followed everything you taught me. I kept perfect records. I never missed a delivery. Her voice broke. You didn't do anything wrong. Mommy did. Mommy did something very wrong. And I'm so sorry. Then the line went dead. Just like that. I stood there, clutching the receiver, my chest hollow. How could running a successful business possibly be wrong? The next day, an investigator arrived. She carried boxes filled with evidence, my marble notebook, Mom's phone records, stacks of papers I didn't understand. She slid one across the table. Can you tell me what this text means? Need 30 blues by Thursday. Oh, that's simple, I said cheerfully. Blue vitamins, 30 pills, Thursday delivery. Probably Torres, he always buys in bulk. She flipped to another. White angels for the usual spot. I grinned. That's Jennifer. She calls the white ones angels. And the usual spot is the corner of 5th and Main. She doesn't like people knocking on her door during the day. The investigator exchanged a grim look with my lawyer. Then she spread out another page filled with phone numbers. Do you recognize this one? She pointed to a yellow highlighted entry. I squinted, then nodded proudly. That's Torres. He called 17 times last Tuesday. Gets really anxious if deliveries are late. Mom says he's difficult, but he pays well, so we keep him happy. On and on I went, identifying numbers, decoding texts, mapping out delivery schedules like I was giving the most impressive school presentation of my life. The investigator's face got darker with every word. You have an incredible memory, she said finally. Thanks. I beamed. Mom says real entrepreneurs know their business inside and out. Oh, can someone call Torres for me? He's probably wondering why I missed yesterday. He gets really mad if. The investigator cut me off gently. Torres has been arrested. My mouth fell open. Arrested? For what? He's just a customer. The worst thing he ever did was call too much when we were late. Her voice was low. Heavy. He wasn't just a customer. He's a dealer. A major one. We've been after him for years. The words hit me like ice water. Dealer? No. That wasn't right. He bought vitamins. You're wrong, I snapped. We sell vitamins. Special vitamins. Mom said so. But even as I said it, my stomach twisted. My mind replayed every moment I'd brushed off. The way Mom's hands shook when she counted bottles, customers who met me in alleys, Mom crying through the vents, whispering that she had no choice but to use me. The room spun. My throat tightened. I just want to go home, I whispered, gripping the table. I have deliveries to make. People are counting on me. The investigator leaned forward gently. You can't go home, and there won't be any more deliveries. That night, the news aired another segment. This time, they said my name. They called me the 10-year-old drug courier. One of the worst cases of child endangerment in county history. I yanked the pillow over my head, trying to block out the TV, trying to block out the whispers of the other kids in the shelter. How could I not have known? All those times I'd bragged to classmates about being an entrepreneur. All the times teachers praised my ambition. All those afternoons I strutted around with my backpack full of pills I thought were vitamins. The truth crashed down like a hammer. I wasn't an entrepreneur. I was a pawn. The woman in pink found me curled up in my bunk. She didn't say a word at first. Just sat beside me until I finally looked up with tears streaming down my face. Then she handed me a tissue. It's not your fault, she whispered. You were just a kid trying to help your mom. My voice cracked. But I was good at it. I was really good at it. Her eyes filled with sadness. I know, she said softly. And that's what makes this so heartbreaking. The next morning brought more investigators. More folders, more questions, more proof that my so-called vitamin empire wasn't what I thought it was. They laid everything out, surveillance footage, photographs of customers, even recordings of phone calls. That's Jennifer, I said confidently, pointing at a blurry still image. She's one of our Tuesday regulars. The investigator's voice was flat. Jennifer is in custody. She's been admitted into treatment. Treatment for what? I wanted to ask. But deep down, the truth was already starting to claw at me. The trembling hands, the desperate phone calls, the customers who looked sick when they missed a delivery. Suddenly, it wasn't vitamins anymore. And I think in that moment, I finally started to understand. 3 days later, my Aunt Teresa showed up at the shelter. I hadn't seen her in years. She looked smaller than I remembered, shoulders slumped like life itself was pressing her down. She signed the custody papers and helped me pack the few things I had left. While I babbled on about the importance of customer relationships during business transitions, she found something, my backup supply list, tucked neatly inside my math textbook. Her hands froze. She read it slowly, lips pressed tight, then slipped it into her purse without a word. The drive to her house took 2 hours. I spent the whole time calculating lost revenue from missed deliveries, wondering if Mom had set up someone else to cover my routes. Aunt Teresa kept glancing at me in the rearview mirror, her brow furrowed like she was scared of what she was seeing. Her house smelled like vanilla candles and fresh laundry, clean, warm, nothing like the chaos I'd come from. She gave me a small room with dinosaur wallpaper and rocket ship sheets, like she was trying to remind me I was still a kid. While she cooked dinner, I wandered into the living room where her 8-year-old daughter Sophia was playing with plastic coins from a board game. Perfect opportunity for a business lesson. I sat down explaining profit margins with her fake money, teaching her markup percentages like it was a math class. Aunt Teresa rushed in the moment she overheard. She scooped up the coins, sent Sophia to wash her hands, then knelt in front of me. Her eyes were firm, almost pleading. She said we weren't going to talk about the business anymore. Because it wasn't a business. Not really. I nodded politely, but inside, all I could think about was how many days of missed deliveries it would take before our customer base collapsed completely. The next morning, she drove me to a cheerful building with colorful walls and toys in the waiting room. Dr. Catherine introduced herself as my therapist. She smiled warmly and asked me to sit down. Eager to impress, I immediately pulled out my notebook and showed her my carefully drawn business plan, crayoned at the shelter during art time. Distribution routes, customer service protocols, even quality control standards. She listened, nodding thoughtfully, jotting notes while I spoke. At the end, she stepped into the hallway to talk to Aunt Teresa. I caught fragments through the door. Complete indoctrination. Therapeutic intervention. Words I didn't understand, but that made my stomach twist. That afternoon, Aunt Teresa signed me up for a support group for kids whose parents had addiction problems. They all shared stories about their moms or dads being sick. When it was my turn, I explained that my situation was different. We weren't addicts, we were entrepreneurs. The group leader let me talk. But then a girl named Kat said her dad had been an entrepreneur too, until the police took him away for selling drugs. I cut her off instantly. No, we sold vitamins. Not substances. The room went silent. The looks on their faces reminded me of the shelter staff. Pity mixed with disbelief. Back at Aunt Teresa's, I snooped a little and found a folder on her desk, newspaper clippings about Mom's case. The headlines made my chest ache. Mother uses child in drug ring. 10-year-old unwitting courier. I didn't cry. Instead, I grabbed scissors and glue. I spent hours turning the clippings into a media scrapbook, neatly arranged by date. In my head, it was free publicity. Proof our business had national reach. Maybe potential investors would see this and want to partner with us. When Aunt Teresa caught me, her face went pale. She sat down heavily beside me, pulling me close, trying once again to explain that this wasn't a business, that it was something dark and destructive. But I couldn't hear her. I was too focused on the growth potential. The following week, Mom's lawyer came to visit. He told me my mother was claiming I'd been a willing participant, hoping it would lessen her sentence. I nodded eagerly. Of course I was willing. I was proud of what we'd built together. The lawyer groaned, rubbing his temples. He asked me again if I understood that what we were selling was illegal. I told him Mom had permits. That she paid taxes. He showed me paperwork proving otherwise, but I assumed it had to be a mistake. Then the prosecutor came. I showed her everything, my customer satisfaction surveys, my loyalty program ideas, even our referral system. She asked if I knew the business inside out. I answered without hesitation, yes. Every client. Every route. Every payment. She thanked me for my honesty, though the look on her face said she wished she hadn't asked. Later that week I heard that Carlos, the supplier mom had been so desperate for, was arrested thanks to the details I'd given. My first thought? Supply chain disruption. Who was going to handle inventory? Did someone at least warn the customers about the delay? The adults in the room stared at me with that same look I was starting to recognize everywhere, a mix of heartbreak and disbelief. School didn't get easier. They sent me somewhere new where no one knew who I was. But I couldn't help myself. Every assignment, every essay, I wrote about entrepreneurship. When asked about role models, I wrote about mom teaching me business skills. My teacher, Mrs. O'Catherine, called Aunt Teresa after reading my essay. Another meeting. Another circle of worried adults speaking in hushed tones about me like I couldn't hear. Eventually, a judge ordered me to stop talking about the case at all. To me, that was insane. Didn't he understand? Publicity drives growth. How do you build a customer base if you're not allowed to market? And then came the whispers about mom's commissary account. Investigators discovered people depositing money for her. I recognized some of the names. They were bulk buyers. Loyal customers. Supporting her even while she was locked up. And honestly, that made me proud. But in Aunt Teresa's house, things were unraveling. Her husband, Robert, was furious. He didn't want the dealer's kid under their roof. He worried about his reputation at work, about Sophia being exposed. Their arguments got louder every night. I tried to fix it. I created a presentation with Sophia's crayons, colorful charts, simple graphs, teaching them how to improve their household efficiency using business strategies I'd mastered. But instead of being impressed, Robert exploded. He said he wouldn't have me around Sophia another day. He demanded I be removed. Aunt Teresa cried as she packed my things into a bag again. I apologized over and over. I told them maybe my presentation hadn't been clear enough, that next time I'd use better visuals. But deep down I knew. They weren't rejecting my business. They were rejecting me. My second emergency foster placement was with an older couple who, I was told, specialized in troubled kids. They had rules. Strict rules. The biggest one? No talking about my past. But I couldn't help myself. At dinner, I found myself explaining optimal delivery routes, inventory turnover, and customer service techniques. They just sat there, looking more and more tired as I laid out strategies like I was giving a TED talk at the table. Meanwhile, the legal prep kept ramping up. The prosecutor realized my memory was disturbingly good. I could map everything, every delivery, every price point. I practiced testimony by drawing flowcharts of our distribution network, diagrams of pricing structures, and detailed notes of mom's lessons. Every scrap of knowledge she drilled into me, I had it all documented. And then came the day of the pre-trial hearing, the first time I saw mom since everything blew up. She didn't look like mom anymore. Thin, gray, shaky, like the life had been wrung out of her. Her hands trembled worse than ever as she sat at the defendant's table. But when her eyes met mine across the courtroom, she mouthed something, words I couldn't understand. I mouthed back, "Business is hard. But we'll get through this together." She broke. She buried her face in her hands and sobbed, shoulders heaving. I sat there, confused. Every business had tough stretches. Why was she so crushed by this? Therapy got more intense after that. Dr. Catherine wrote down phrases like complete lack of trauma recognition. I thought she meant I was handling our business setback with maturity. During sessions, I filled entire pages with new market strategies for when mom came home. The kids in the foster house didn't see me as resilient. They avoided me, whispered about the dealer's kid. When I tried explaining that we were entrepreneurs, not criminals, they just stared like I was speaking another language. Then, Grandma came. She flew in from Puerto Rico. I hadn't seen her since before the business. She spoke mostly Spanish, but her tears translated enough. She sat with my notebooks, pointing to entries, shaking her head while crying. She pulled out old photos, mom smiling, healthy, laughing with me at the park. Then she showed me dad's death certificate. The date lined up exactly with when the vitamin business had started. Trial prep dug deeper. They had videos. Footage of me at 8 years old, proudly counting cash while mom coached me on customer satisfaction. The prosecutor played it during prep. Everyone in the room looked sick. Me? I felt proud. Watching my younger self show such business sense, it was like watching a highlight reel. Parents from my old school testified that substances were found in their kids' backpacks. And those pills? Traced right back to me. My first reaction? Panic about quality control. Had we slipped up? We were always so careful about inventory management. My school records were analyzed too. Perfect attendance on delivery days. Repeated absences whenever mom was too sick to function. To me, it was proof of my dedication. To them, it was evidence. Mom's own lawyer asked for a competency evaluation after hearing my testimony prep. He said the level of exploitation was beyond anything he'd ever seen. I thought he meant I was exceptionally skilled for my age. The prosecutor refused every plea deal. Severe child endangerment, she called it. I even tried to help by making a PowerPoint, crayon-drawn charts and all, about the skills I'd learned. Nobody wanted to see it. When I explained our loyalty rewards program during testimony practice, the prosecutor's pen froze mid-scribble. I laid it all out, points for consistent orders, discounts for referrals. She just shook her head like she couldn't believe what she was hearing. A child psychologist later testified I showed signs of criminal grooming from my earliest memories. I heard that word, grooming, and thought it meant mom had been training me for business success. I sat taller, proud that professionals recognized it. Then a message came through mom's lawyer. Mom wanted me to know she was getting clean. I misunderstood, of course. I assumed she meant hygiene. I even made a note to send her soap. The trial began with me as the star witness. I wore my best shirt with the little cardboard and glitter entrepreneur pin I'd made during therapy craft time. Dr. Catherine begged me not to wear it, but I told her it was part of my professional identity. On the stand, I told the jury how I'd learned to count money at 6. Their faces twisted, but I thought they were impressed. I explained our growth strategy, customer acquisition plans, loyalty programs, every operational detail. The court reporter typed frantically, struggling to keep up. When I casually mentioned hiding products inside my teddy bear during earlier police visits, Mom collapsed, sobbing uncontrollably at the defense table. I felt bad, but contingency planning was crucial in business. The defense tried to shake me on cross-examination, but it backfired. Every question gave me a chance to explain more: bulk discounts, inventory flow, safety measures. I answered cheerfully, unaware I was dismantling their case in real time. During a recess, I raised my hand and asked if we could restart the business once Mom got out. The courtroom went dead silent. The judge had to call for order. I spent the break networking, handing out handwritten business cards I'd made on notebook paper. By lunch, I overheard the prosecution team whispering about my case. The worst child endangerment we've ever seen. I thought, wow. Memorable. Our business really made an impression. Then came the medical evidence. At 9, I'd been hospitalized with exhaustion. I remembered it as a big sales week. But doctors testified it was withdrawal, from secondhand exposure to the very pills I carried. My stunted growth? Not genetics. Toxic exposure. I thought back to all those nights, carefully counting pills, certain I was being responsible. When Mom took the stand, everything cracked open. She admitted it all. She sobbed through every word. I sat there taking notes like it was valuable material for a future memoir. Carlos testified too, confirming Mom had used me because kids don't draw suspicion. I seethed. He was giving away trade secrets. The verdict was swift, guilty on all counts. As the judge read the charges, I raised my hand again. Who's going to inherit the business now? I asked. The courtroom erupted in whispers. The judge slammed his gavel. 2 weeks later, sentencing day arrived. I wore the same shirt. Same entrepreneur pin. I'd even written up a continuity plan for how we could keep things running under new leadership. When they brought Mom in wearing orange, I barely recognized her. So thin. So tired. I waved, but she wouldn't even look at me. The prosecutor outlined every ugly detail. Mom's lawyer begged for leniency, citing addiction, cooperation, even letters from inmates describing her remorse. I wrote it all down. Character references could be useful one day. Then the judge spoke. His voice was full of disgust. He said it was the worst case of child exploitation he'd seen in 30 years on the bench. Minimum of 12 years. I raised my hand to ask about succession planning. But the bailiff stepped forward and Dr. Catherine pulled my arm down firmly. They led Mom away as I sat there clutching my continuity plan, wondering why nobody would take it. From the outside, the therapeutic boarding school looked like any other school. Brick walls, windows with blinds, a playground off to the side. But inside, everything was different. No backpacks in the rooms. Phone calls only under supervision. Mandatory group therapy every single day. They assigned me a roommate named Marcus. He'd already been there 6 months and knew the ropes. He gave me the rundown: don't talk about crimes, don't recruit other kids, don't talk about business. I lasted 2 days. By math class, I couldn't resist. I launched into an explanation of profit margins, and before I knew it, I was up at the board sketching out an entire supply chain diagram. The teacher stopped me immediately, but the damage was done. That earned me my first one-on-one session with Dr. Patricia, the school's therapist. She specialized in what she called criminal thinking patterns. She asked me to describe a normal day before Mom's arrest. I happily listed it out like a CEO's morning checklist, reviewing inventory, scheduling deliveries, confirming customer appointments, double-checking quality control. She wrote furiously in her notes, then showed me a different kind of chart, one that mapped out how Mom had trained me since age 6 to normalize dealing. I studied it like a business report, but all I saw were growth milestones. Counting money, managing routes, handling customers. To me, it still looked like skill development. Dr. Patricia sighed, scheduled me for daily sessions, and I left still convinced I was doing something right. Group therapy was worse. Other kids talked about their parents' crimes with shame, anger, even grief. When my turn came, I called it our family business and described our innovative distribution model. That's when a boy named David cut me off. He told me about finding his little sister unconscious after she'd bought pills at school. The therapist asked me if I understood the connection. I shrugged and said maybe we just needed better quality control. That night, Marcus opened up. He told me his dad had run a meth lab. That he'd been helping since he was 8, thinking it was medicine. His sister had died from contaminated product. He told me it took him 4 months at the school before he could even say the word drugs instead of medicine. I listened, but in my head I was still categorizing it as business education. The breakthrough didn't come in therapy. It came in art class. They asked us to draw our families. I drew an organizational chart, Mom as CEO, me as operations manager. When the therapist asked me to draw us doing something not work-related, my pencil froze. I couldn't think of anything. The paper stayed blank for the whole hour. Then came Carlos's testimony transcript. Dr. Patricia read pieces aloud. The part about Mom trading my services for product when she didn't have cash. I called those strategic partnerships. The part about her dragging me along to dealers' houses, using me as insurance because nobody would hurt a kid. She slid the pages across and for the first time I read Carlos's words myself. How mom would cry after sending me on dangerous runs. How she'd use more pills afterward to smother the guilt. How the cycle just kept eating her alive. Something cracked inside me. I put the papers down and stared at the wall. Dr. Patricia didn't push. She just waited. I picked the transcript back up and kept reading. Carlos had described mom nodding off unconscious while I sat in the corner counting stacks of money. Dealers laughing at the little businessman while my mom lay motionless. That's when my hands started shaking. Not mom's tremors, not withdrawal shakes, something new. Something I didn't have a word for. Dr. Patricia asked what I was feeling. I couldn't answer. She suggested we walk. The school had a small garden, real vegetables, not code words. We walked between the tomato plants while she asked me about my earliest memory of mom before all this. And suddenly it hit me, a birthday. A homemade cake. Mom singing to me before dad died. Before the business. Before her hands ever shook. That night I couldn't sleep. Marcus asked what was wrong, so I told him about the cake. About mom's voice back then, soft, steady, happy. He shared how his dad used to build model airplanes with him, before the lab consumed everything. We lay there in the dark, two kids trading scraps of who our parents used to be. The next group session, when they asked about my family, I didn't call it a business. For the first time I said, my mom was sick. The words felt strange in my mouth, like clothes that didn't fit. But the therapist nodded. And then I added, she made me sick too. I don't know how yet. David reached across and squeezed my shoulder. Days blurred together in routine. Classes. Therapy. Activities designed to rewire our thinking. I stopped sketching supply chains in my free time. I started pulling books on addiction from the school library instead. Dopamine. Dependency. How grief and trauma can turn medicine into chains. During family therapy via video call, I asked Aunt Teresa if mom had shown signs before dad died. She cried as she explained, mom had been an honor roll student, volleyball player, dreamed of becoming a nurse. But after dad's cancer diagnosis, she fell apart. The pills started with him. Then she started taking them too. The vitamin business started 3 months after the funeral. That afternoon in individual therapy, I finally broke. Not businessman tears. Not frustration over setbacks. Real, gut-deep sobs. For the first time since the arrest, I cried because I felt betrayed. Because the truth was simple and brutal, she was supposed to protect me. Weeks later, I found my little cardboard and glitter entrepreneur pin tucked in my desk drawer. I hadn't touched it since the trial. That night, I brought it to group. I told them how proud I'd been to wear it, how it represented everything I thought I was. What do you want to do with it now? The therapist asked. I didn't know. David suggested burning it. Marcus said I should keep it as a reminder. Others shared their stories, burying objects, throwing them out, reshaping them into something new. The school had a fire pit for therapeutic ceremonies. That Friday they lit it. 3 of us stood there with our relics. One girl burned her father's arrest report. Marcus threw in a photo of the meth lab. I stood with that pin in my hand. It felt heavy even though it weighed almost nothing. I dropped it into the fire. Watched it melt and curl into black plastic. I waited to feel different. Nothing happened immediately. But that night, for the first time in years, I fell asleep without mentally checking delivery schedules. And that somehow felt like the beginning. Physical education became the outlet I never saw coming. Running laps cleared the endless spreadsheets in my head. Basketball forced me into the present moment. No profit margins, no customer lists, just trying and failing to make a layup. My teammates didn't know my full story. They just knew my mom was in prison. To them, I was just another kid. And for once, that was enough. One afternoon, the coach pulled me aside. He'd been watching me fuss over the equipment, reorganizing basketballs and jerseys into little inventory systems without even realizing it. But instead of scolding me, he smiled and asked if I wanted to be team manager. A real role. A legitimate place to use my skills without hurting anyone. I said yes. In therapy, we spent weeks unpacking why it felt so different from the business. About 3 months in, mom's letters started arriving. At first, they were the same, apologies, promises I'd heard before. But Dr. Patricia helped me write back, not as her little business partner, but as her son setting boundaries. I told her about basketball. About learning to see myself as more than her sidekick. I didn't mention that I still sometimes caught myself calculating lost revenue. News trickled in. Mom had finished a prison rehab program. She'd earned her GED. She was even leading support groups for other inmates. Her letters changed too, less about saying sorry, more about reflecting. She wrote about her therapy, about separating grief from addiction, about finally facing what she'd done to me. I wrote back about burning the entrepreneur pin. About crying in therapy. About how playing basketball felt different than hustling. I admitted some days I still analyzed lunch line behavior like customer patterns. Recovery wasn't a straight road for either of us. 6 months later, in career planning class, they asked us to share our futures. Some kids said mechanic. Others said teacher or counselor. When it was my turn, I surprised myself. Social worker. The teacher asked why. I thought about kids like me right now, counting pills, thinking they were CEOs. Kids who needed someone to recognize the signs. The school lined up volunteer opportunities. I worked at a community center, helping with after-school programs. One boy bragged about helping his uncle's import business. I recognized that pride instantly, the same puffed-up feeling I used to have. I told the director, who knew the proper way to report it. Meanwhile, my testimony didn't just convict mom. It helped bring down 2 other parents who'd used their kids as couriers. At one trial, I sat in the gallery with the same prosecutor who'd handled my mom's case. The defendant's daughter was 12. She testified eagerly about her sales records, wearing a handmade business girl badge. My stomach turned, I saw myself in her. That proud, confused face, not realizing what it all meant. Afterward, the prosecutor thanked me. She said my case had reshaped how they handled children in substance crimes. New interview methods. More support. My story was changing things. And for the first time, I felt something I couldn't name. Not pride, but maybe purpose. At the year-end ceremony, they gave out academic awards. My name was called for Most Improved Perspective. I walked to the stage without my glittery pin, without any props. Just me. A kid who had survived something unimaginable, finally learning how to heal. That night, I called Aunt Teresa. Told her about the award. About wanting to study social work in college. She cried happy tears. Said Sophia kept asking when I'd come visit. We planned supervised visits, with clear rules about what was off limits. This time, I wasn't going to be a mentor. I was just going to be her cousin. The acceptance letter came on a Tuesday. State University, social work program. Partial scholarship. My essay had been about transformation, the birthday cake memory, moms shaking hands, burning the pin, learning that real success wasn't about building an empire, but about breaking cycles. Dr. Patricia smiled when I showed her. She asked how it felt to have real, legitimate goals. I admitted sometimes my brain still compared the scholarship dollars to how much we could have made moving product. She nodded. Recovery wasn't pretending those thoughts were gone, it was acknowledging them, then choosing differently. Mom's parole hearing was scheduled for 5 years out. I wrote a letter for her file. I said I supported release, but only with conditions, continued treatment, supervised visits. I told them I understood now what she'd taken from me. But I also told them I hoped she could heal too. The last day at boarding school felt surreal. Marcus had already left, working at his uncle's auto shop. David was starting community college. We swapped contact info, promising to stay in touch. Not as substance kids. As friends. I packed my things carefully. Left behind the mental spreadsheets and tracking habits. Took with me the basketball team photo, my acceptance letter, and the simple knowledge that I'd survived. Dr. Patricia hugged me goodbye. Healing isn't a destination, she said softly. It's a daily choice. Aunt Teresa picked me up in the same car that once carried me away from Mom's world. But this ride was different. I didn't spend the miles calculating revenue loss. I asked about Sophia's school play. I told Aunt Teresa about my class schedule. We stopped at a diner for lunch. Nobody there knew my story. To them, I was just another teenager heading off to college. That night, while digging through Aunt Teresa's garage, I found one of my old notebooks. Customer lists. Delivery schedules. Satisfaction surveys. All in my childish handwriting. Records of crimes I hadn't known were crimes. I sat on the cold floor, reading page after page of a life I used to be proud of. Aunt Teresa found me there, asked if I wanted to keep it for therapy or evidence. I shook my head. We burned it in the backyard fire pit. I watched the neat handwriting curl into ash. And for the first time, the weight lifted. Not completely, some burdens never fully go away, but enough to breathe. Enough to finally start living. College orientation hit me with a wave of irony. Session after session about substance culture, campus dealers, and recognizing the warning signs. Stuff I'd mastered before middle school. My new roommate groaned about the boring safety lectures. Me? I sat there taking notes, except this time from the other side. In my first social work class, the professor asked why we'd chosen this field. Students shared touching stories, teachers who inspired them, relatives they admired, the urge to give back. When it came to me, I kept it simple. My mom was sick. I want to help families heal. True enough, without the details that would have made me stand out. Study groups formed naturally. I joined one focused on addiction and family services. My classmates were amazed by how much I knew, enabling behaviors, manipulation tactics, how addiction ripples through a household. They thought I'd done years of research. I let them think that. At the tutoring center, my part-time job, I channeled the same skills I'd once used for deliveries into legitimate systems, study guides, scheduling, progress logs. My supervisor praised my professional-level organization. I smiled, thanking her, but inside I knew where I'd first learned it. Then on my birthday, Mom called. Our first real conversation outside of official channels. Her voice sounded different. Clearer, steadier, but still heavy with sadness. She wished me happy birthday, asked about classes, told me about vocational training and support groups she was leading inside. For 15 minutes, we talked like normal people. Pretending we'd always been normal. The anniversary of her arrest came quietly. I went to class, worked my shift, had dinner with friends who had no idea what the date meant. That night, I wrote in the journal Dr. Patricia had once encouraged me to keep. I reflected on how far I'd come from the boy who wore an entrepreneur pin in court, and how far I still had to go. When Professor Williams assigned a research project on intervention strategies, I proposed studying early identification of children being used in substance operations. She lit up, said it was innovative, even offered agency connections. I accepted, knowing my perspective was unique. This time, my bibliography wouldn't be customer notes, it would be actual research. The presentation went well. My classmates asked thoughtful questions. I cited studies, statistics. Only Professor Williams noticed my hands shaking when I explained how children rationalize their jobs. She gave me a quiet nod, letting me finish without comment. Winter break meant going back to Aunt Teresa's house. Sophia had grown taller, was learning multiplication. She asked me for homework help. I caught myself almost turning word problems into profit margins. I stopped, apologized, started over. She didn't notice. But Aunt Teresa squeezed my shoulder, understanding exactly what that pause had cost me. Then came the call from Victim Services. Another trial. Another parent had been using 3 kids as runners. The youngest was 7. They needed me to testify, not as a victim this time, but as someone who understood. On the stand, I explained grooming. How kids are praised for their business skills. How they take pride in keeping perfect records of crimes they don't understand. The jury looked horrified. In the gallery, I saw the defendants' kids, wearing matching Daddy's Helper t-shirts. My heart cracked. They'd learn the truth one day just like I had. The guilty verdict was relief, not victory. Because those children would still need years of therapy, foster homes, and painful realizations before they could even start healing. I prayed they'd find their own Dr. Patricius. Spring semester brought internship placements. I asked for the Child Advocacy Center. The director interviewed me carefully, sensing my interest was personal. I told enough of the truth to establish credibility without overwhelming her. She accepted me, pairing me with a trauma-informed supervisor. My first case file was a 9-year-old girl found with substance packaging in her backpack. Her mother claimed ignorance. But the note said the child described pricing in detail, even called it helping with the family business. I froze reading it. My supervisor noticed, asked if I needed a break. I shook my head and instead suggested strategies, ways to build trust without reinforcing her business pride. My supervisor listened, impressed. Later, the girl disclosed 2 years of deliveries. She thought she was saving up for vacations. Case after case felt like looking in a mirror. The boy who thought keeping perfect ledgers made him useful. The girl who believed her mom's boyfriend was teaching her skills. Siblings who competed over who moved more product, like it was a game. Every one of them was me. Mom's letters shifted again. She told me about the book she was reading, her prison job training, women she was sponsoring in recovery. I wrote about internships, classes, basketball. We both avoided the past directly, but it was always there, written between the lines. The scholarship committee asked me to speak at their fundraising dinner. They wanted inspiration, a success story. I agreed, but I was honest. I said recovery wasn't a neat arc. Some days I still thought like a dealer. Healing wasn't survival, it was choosing again and again. After my speech, donors came forward quietly. Some shared stories of their own families torn apart by addiction. One woman whispered that her son had used his children as runners too. One was in prison. One was in foster care. One had disappeared. She pressed a check into my hand, hoping her contribution could change someone else's ending. Summer gave me a chance to build something new. At the Advocacy Center, I developed workshops for foster parents raising children from substance-involved families. I taught them how to redirect kids' organizational skills, how to validate intelligence while dismantling criminal thinking, how to respond when kids bragged about business. The first session had 12 participants. Their questions were practical, raw. One foster mom stayed after, crying. Her foster son had been drawing business plans nonstop. She thought it was cute, until my workshop made her realize what he was really doing. We talked for an hour about patience, about consistency, about believing in change even when the child couldn't. That's when the center director offered me a permanent position after graduation. Entry-level, but growth potential. Direct work with kids like me. I accepted immediately. Because this was where my story was meant to lead. Not to entrepreneurship. Not to profit. But to breaking cycles. To protecting innocence. To helping kids understand they were victims, not partners. Not business managers. Just children. Senior year felt like stepping fully into the role I'd been preparing for without realizing it. I wasn't just a student anymore. At the Advocacy Center, I carried a full caseload, supervised new workers, even testified in court when needed. I designed assessment tools to spot substance-involved kids early, created training programs for staff, and ran support groups for teens about to age out of foster care. Every organizational skill Mom had drilled into me was still there, but now I was wielding them for healing instead of harm. My thesis committee approved my proposal on identity reformation in criminally exploited children. My advisor told me to submit it for publication, that it could influence how professionals nationwide approached kids like me. I spent months carefully translating lived experience into academic language, layering statistics over scars. Because I knew in my bones the truth: children will believe anything, if it comes from the people they love. Then came the news I'd been both waiting for and dreading: Mom's parole hearing. Her record showed good behavior, program completion, real effort at recovery. I wrote a support letter, balanced but firm, acknowledging her progress but insisting on boundaries. The board approved her release with conditions: ongoing treatment, monitored contact, structured accountability. Relief and anxiety tangled inside me. The day she walked out, I barely recognized her. Smaller, grayer, but clearer than I'd seen her since before Dad died. We hugged under the watchful eyes of staff, both crying. She whispered apologies I'd already accepted. I whispered one word back: forgiveness. She didn't quite believe it yet. Maybe she still doesn't. They placed her in transitional housing 40 minutes from campus. Our first meal outside prison was in a neutral diner with an advocate present. We talked about her job applications, my graduation plans, normal things. Both of us relearning how to be mother and child without crime as the glue. Graduation came faster than I expected. Aunt Teresa, Robert, and Sophia sat in the audience. Mom watched the live stream, honoring the boundary we'd set. When my name was called, I walked that stage as someone I couldn't have imagined at 10 years old. Educated. Healing. With purpose. The old glittery entrepreneur pin was gone. In its place was the quiet conviction that real success meant breaking cycles, not building them. At the advocacy center, my co-workers had decorated my new office with banners and cards. My first case as a licensed social worker came quickly, a 12-year-old caught selling pills at school. His father swore he'd acted alone. But the boy sat across from me, proudly explaining his distribution system, his customer base, his profit margins. Every word stabbed like an echo. So I met him where he was. I spoke his language, asked about his spreadsheets, his business model. Then slowly, gently, began shifting the perspective. Watched his confidence flicker, his loyalty battle with logic. Saw the same confusion I'd once carried. I told him what I had once needed to hear. You are not alone. You are not a criminal. You are a kid who deserves better than this. The work became my rhythm. Home visits, courtrooms, family sessions, staff trainings. Each child different, but every story familiar. Some angry, some proud, some heartbreakingly naive. All of them carrying wounds adults had carved. Over time, I built a specialty, criminal exploitation of children. I consulted across the state, published articles, spoke at conferences. Professionals quoted my research, but behind every slide deck was still that 10-year-old boy with a notebook full of customer lists, believing he was an entrepreneur. Mom's progress grew steadier too. 1 year clean. Then 2. She got promoted at her restaurant job. Moved into better housing. Built a recovery circle that kept her accountable. Our relationship evolved, monthly lunches became weekly calls. Supervised visits became independent ones. We never erased the past, but we built something new alongside it. Healing, slow but steady. Then came the call that shook me. 10-year-old twins had been found running a distribution network at their elementary school. Their parents claimed ignorance, but the twins' notebooks told a different story, detailed ledgers in childish handwriting. The prosecutor wanted me to testify. I agreed, knowing it meant facing ghosts. In court, the twins spoke eagerly about their vitamin business. Customer service, quality control, expansion plans. They beamed with pride, insisting they were smart kids helping their parents. My throat tightened. It was like watching myself years ago, standing in front of adults who saw tragedy where I saw triumph. The guilty verdict didn't bring satisfaction. Only relief that maybe finally the cycle could be interrupted. But I knew those kids would defend their parents for years. Through foster homes. Through therapy. Through the painful unraveling of realizing their business was a lie. As I left the courthouse, my phone rang. The Advocacy Center had won a grant, funding for a new division focused entirely on children exploited in criminal enterprises. They wanted me to lead it. More staff. More resources. More chances to stop the pattern. I said yes immediately. Because that's what my life had been moving toward all along. That night I called Mom. Told her about the grant, about leading the new division. She cried, told me she was proud. We talked about the twins, about cycles, about redemption not as one grand gesture, but as 1,000 small daily choices. And later, alone, I thought about that boy, 10 years old, clutching a notebook, wearing a homemade entrepreneur pin into court, believing success meant selling pills with precision. That boy still lives inside me. But he's not running the show anymore. Now I take that same determination, that same organizational drive, and turn it toward protecting kids like him. Toward making sure the next confused child hears the truth sooner. The work is hard. The stories gut me. Some days the weight feels unbearable. But most days I know this is exactly where I was meant to be. 5 years after Mom's arrest, I found myself standing in front of another conference room. Not as a witness. Not as a victim. This time I was teaching. Prosecutors. Social workers. Therapists. All gathered to learn how to recognize and support children like me, kids who'd been turned into criminals before they even knew what the word meant. I shared strategies I'd wish someone had used with me. How to build trust while gently challenging criminal thinking. How to validate intelligence without glorifying exploitation. How to help a child form an identity outside of their so-called family business. The questions came carefully, respectfully. When do you challenge denial versus allowing space to process? How do you reframe business skills into something healthy? I answered from the middle ground, half research, half scars. Evidence-based interventions infused with lived truth. One participant stayed afterward, a guardian ad litem. She told me about her case, siblings who'd been running substances since elementary school. Now teenagers, they still swore they'd been junior entrepreneurs. She didn't know how to reach them. We sat together for hours, developing strategies tailored just for them. And I realized this was full circle. My trauma becoming someone else's toolkit. That night, I wrote in my journal about transformation. About how healing isn't just about surviving your own story, it's about using it to light the way for others. About how the 10-year-old with the entrepreneur pin had somehow become the adult teaching the world that kids like him deserved better. Mom marked 5 years clean around the same time. Reduced supervision. A milestone that mattered more than we said out loud. She'd rebuilt herself through recovery meetings, accountability, service. I'd rebuilt myself through therapy, education, and boundaries. Neither journey was finished, recovery never is, but we had both traveled far from where we started. The Advocacy Center expanded again, this time into schools. We developed screening tools for counselors to catch at-risk kids early, before confusion hardened into loyalty, before they wore their criminal pride like a badge. Every child redirected felt like redemption. Not erasure of what I'd been through, but transformation of it. The anniversary of burning my pin came and went without ceremony. Just another day of meetings, case files, and testimony prep. But that night I paused. Remembered watching the plastic curl into nothing. That was the night I started to become who I am now. 10 years after the arrest, I had become something I never imagined, a professional who transformed trauma into service. A man who used his scars to keep other children from earning theirs. Not the entrepreneur I'd once bragged about being, but something far more valuable. Because here's the truth, the real business success was never about profit margins or customer satisfaction. It was about children's lives being redirected, families being healed, cycles being broken. It was every confused kid learning they were victims, not partners. Every parent choosing recovery over ruin. Every professional better equipped to recognize exploitation. That's the entrepreneur I became. Not the boy counting pills and cash, but the man counting lives changed. Not building criminal networks, but building support systems. Not trading hope for profit, but trading trauma for purpose. The business that stole my childhood became the reason I fight to protect other children's. And if that 10-year-old could see me now, educated, employed, helping kids like him, I think he'd finally understand. Success was never about running the business. It was about surviving it, healing from it, making sure others don't have to. Some stories don't get perfect endings. Mom still struggles. I still catch myself thinking like a dealer sometimes. And yes, there are still children out there proudly tracking sales in notebooks they don't understand. But I also know this, cycles can be broken. Healing is possible. And every confused child can be shown that they are more than their exploitation. That's my story. Not the entrepreneurial triumph I once imagined, but something better. A life built on purpose, prevention, and protection. Because the only business worth building is one that saves childhoods instead of stealing them. That's all for today, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Thanks for listening, my friend. Every story has its end, but we'll meet again. Oh, we'll meet again. So keep your